Some moments in Scripture refuse to move quickly. They resist explanation. They do not announce their importance with noise or urgency. Instead, they settle quietly, asking the reader to slow down and remain present. This story begins in one of those moments. Not at the act itself, not at the consequence, but at the pause before anything appears to go wrong. Before the choice that would reshape everything, there is silence. A silence that feels complete, not empty. Nothing is broken yet. Nothing feels dangerous. The world still holds together. Trust still feels natural. The garden does not tremble. God has not withdrawn. There is no visible warning that history is standing at a fragile edge. Eve is not introduced here as a symbol or a warning. She appears as a person living inside familiarity, inside belonging, inside a rhythm that has never required suspicion. There is no sense of rebellion in this moment. No urgency pushing her forward. What exists instead is awareness, quiet, unforced, and still unnamed. Scripture does something subtle here. It does not rush to explain motives. It does not dramatize the tension. It allows the moment to breathe. And in that space, something begins to form internally before anything happens externally. A thought that does not feel like disobedience. A consideration that does not yet feel like danger. A possibility that enters gently, without pressure. Nothing has been chosen yet. Nothing has been lost yet. But something has shifted beneath the surface. Not in the environment, not in God's presence, but in human awareness. And that is what makes this moment so easy to overlook and so essential to stay with. This is where the story quietly asks the listener to stop rushing toward conclusions, to stand inside the stillness, to notice how life-changing moments often arrive without drama, without force, and without immediate clarity. The garden remains whole. The silence remains unbroken. And yet something irreversible is already approaching, not because it has happened, but because it can. These stories are shared for those who choose depth over speed, for those who want faith explored, not simplified. If this kind of slow, reflective, biblical storytelling is what you seek, you are invited to subscribe, not casually, but intentionally. The story has not begun to move yet. Life before awareness entered. Before anything fractures, the world feels steady. Not perfect in a dramatic sense, but settled, familiar. The kind of stability that does not draw attention to itself because it has never been questioned. This is the environment Eve knows, not as a setting to analyze, but as life itself. The garden is not a backdrop, it is home. Eve moves within this space without fear or calculation. There is no reason to hesitate, no memory of loss, no concept of separation. Every part of existence still feels aligned: creation, purpose, presence. God is not distant here. His nearness is assumed, not searched for. It is woven into the rhythm of daily life. Nothing in this moment feels fragile. The air does not carry tension. The ground does not signal instability. There is routine, but not boredom. Freedom, but not anxiety. The world does not yet require constant interpretation. Things simply are what they appear to be. And because of that, nothing feels urgent enough to question deeply. This is important to understand. The choice that will come does not rise from chaos or dissatisfaction. It emerges from normality, from a place where trust has never been tested, and therefore has never needed defense. Eve does not wake up searching for alternatives. She does not move through the garden expecting deception. There is no internal alarm telling her to be cautious. Scripture presents this calm without commentary. It does not hint that danger is nearby. It allows the viewer to relax into the scene, to feel how unthreatening everything appears. And in doing so, it builds a quiet tension. Not because something is wrong, but because nothing feels wrong at all. This is how pivotal moments often begin. Not with disruption, but with comfort. Not with warning signs, but with familiarity. When life feels most stable, awareness can shift without resistance. When nothing seems broken, nothing seems urgent to protect. No consequences are visible yet. No loss has occurred, no distance has formed. But beneath the calm surface, the conditions for a decision are quietly present. The story has not turned. The rupture has not happened. Everything still feels safe. And that is exactly what makes what comes next possible. The choice formed in silence. The moment of decision does not arrive loudly. It does not interrupt the calm or shatter the environment. It settles into the silence already present, almost indistinguishable from reflection. What unfolds here happens inwardly first, long before any outward action could name it. Eve is not pushed. She is not cornered. Scripture makes this unmistakably clear by what it does not show. There is no force, no compulsion, no divine restraint pulling her back, and no divine absence abandoning her. God remains who he has always been. His presence has not shifted. What shifts is the space where choice becomes possible. Silence becomes active here, not empty but full. It allows thought to linger. It gives time for consideration to feel reasonable. The boundary that once felt simple now invites reflection. Not rebellion, but curiosity. Not defiance, but interpretation. The decision begins to form not in action, but in agreement. A quiet internal alignment with a possibility that did not exist before. This is the weight of free will, as Scripture presents it. God does not intervene to remove the choice. He does not rush to prevent the outcome. He honors the freedom he has given, even when that freedom carries risk. The moment is sacred not because of what will happen, but because of what is being respected. The decision, in this sense, is already taking shape before anything visible occurs. The action will come later, but the turning point happens here, in the unseen space where trust and interpretation meet. Once that inner line is crossed, the external act becomes almost inevitable. Not because it is forced, but because it has been accepted. Nothing in the environment changes yet. The garden remains whole, the silence remains intact, but something irreversible has been set in motion. Not by the breaking of a rule, but by the acceptance of a different understanding of reality. The world has not fallen apart, but the certainty with which it was once held has begun to loosen. This is the moment Scripture allows to remain quiet. It does not dramatize it. It does not explain it away. It lets the listener feel the gravity without spectacle. Because once a decision forms at this level, it cannot be undone by hesitation. The act has not happened yet, but the direction has been chosen. And from this point forward, the story can no longer return to what it was. The loss that made no noise. The moment after the decision does not look like collapse. There is no thunder, no sudden fracture in the world. Creation does not recoil. The garden does not disappear. Everything remains visibly intact, and that is what makes the change so disorienting. The consequence arrives without spectacle, without announcement, and without immediate destruction. What shifts first is perception. Awareness becomes heavier. The familiar no longer feels effortless. Nothing external has changed, yet something internal no longer rests the same way. The silence that once felt safe now carries exposure. Not accusation, but realization. The world has not turned hostile. It has simply become seen differently. God's presence is not withdrawn. Scripture does not portray abandonment, but the relationship now holds a new dimension. Where trust once flowed without friction, it now passes through awareness. Distance appears not as separation of location, but as a change in how nearness is experienced. The consequence is not punishment in motion, but innocence giving way to knowing. There is loss here, but it is quiet. Not of life, not of belonging, but of simplicity. The ease of unexamined trust fades. The weight of choice settles in. Nothing demands fear, yet nothing feels untouched. The story resists dramatic judgment because the true consequence is internal. It is the realization that something cannot be unseen. This is the break Scripture invites the reader to feel. Not terror, but discomfort. Not destruction, but awareness. The world continues, God remains, but the way forward will never again be effortless. The consequence has arrived, and it did not need noise to be real. Why this moment still repeats. This story does not remain in the garden. It moves with humanity. It repeats quietly, across lives and generations, not as the same action, but as the same pattern. A moment of calm, a pause that feels harmless, a choice that forms internally long before anything visible changes. What makes this story enduring is not the act itself, but the familiarity of the process. Decisions rarely arrive as dramatic crossroads. They appear as thoughts we entertain without urgency, interpretations we accept without resistance, shifts in perception that feel small enough to ignore. And like Eve's moment, they often emerge when nothing feels wrong. The story speaks because it mirrors how awareness enters modern life. A belief reconsidered, a boundary reinterpreted, a trust adjusted, not out of malice, but out of curiosity or reasoning that feels justified. The consequence is rarely immediate. Life continues. The environment stays the same. But internally, something has changed. Scripture's power here is its restraint. It does not moralize. It reflects. It shows that the most transformative moments in human life often arrive quietly, without announcement. And once awareness shifts, innocence cannot simply be restored by intention alone. This is why the story remains relevant, not because it accuses, but because it recognizes. It names a human experience that transcends time, the realization that some choices do not destroy life instantly. They alter how life is experienced. The garden becomes a mirror, not of ancient failure, but of ongoing human movement. And in that reflection, the story stops being distant. It becomes familiar, uncomfortably so, where awareness leaves us. The story does not close with resolution. Scripture does not rush to restore what was lost, nor does it offer a clean emotional landing. Instead, it returns to silence, not as emptiness, but as space. A space where awareness lingers, where certainty no longer shields the heart from complexity, where faith is no longer effortless, yet still possible. What remains is not an answer, but a question that refuses to fade. After the choice, after the consequence, after awareness enters the human story, life continues, but differently. God is still near, creation still stands, but the relationship now includes responsibility, reflection, and choice carried forward. Faith, from this point on, is no longer defined by innocence. It is shaped by intention. It is lived not by ignoring awareness, but by carrying it honestly. Scripture does not condemn doubt here. It allows it. It shows that trust does not require the absence of questions, only the decision to remain present despite them. This is where the story gently releases the listener, not with instruction, not with moral conclusion, but with recognition. Because the true power of this narrative is not what Eve did. It is what every human faces after awareness enters life. When simplicity fades, when choices carry weight, when faith must be chosen rather than assumed, these stories are shared for those who value depth over speed, for those who are willing to stay with Scripture long enough to feel its quiet weight. If this kind of long-form, unhurried biblical reflection speaks to you, you are invited to subscribe. Not casually, but intentionally. Not to consume, but to continue. The story does not end with a full return. It ends with awareness and with a question that follows you beyond the screen. Where do you stand now?